Okay, so let's jump right in. We're going to connect three things that, on the surface, seem totally unrelated. The future of artificial intelligence, our planet's changing climate, and a massive icy island that's suddenly at the very center of a new global power struggle.
It all boils down to this really simple but powerful idea that's shaping global politics right now, the race for AI dominance. It's not just about who can write the best code, it's about who controls the actual physical stuff that makes it all run.
And that's right. A huge chunk of it is buried under the ice in Greenland. This isn't some sci-fi movie plot. This is a real global competition for the raw materials that power our digital world. And they just happen to be hidden in one of the most remote places on Earth.
So what exactly are we talking about here? What is buried under all that ice, and why has it suddenly become so incredibly important for the future of technology?
Well, it all comes down to something called critical minerals. Now, the official US government definition is right there, but here's an easier way to think about it. They're like the essential vitamins for the tech world. You don't need a ton of them, but without them, absolutely nothing works. They are the fundamental building blocks for, well, everything, from your smartphone to the most powerful AI systems.
And Greenland is sitting on an absolute treasure trove. We're talking an estimated 1.5 million tons of these rare earth reserves, putting it 8th in the world. And these aren't just obscure elements, they're in things you use every day, like cerium, which is needed to polish the screen of the very device you might be watching this on, or germanium, which is absolutely vital for the fiber optic cables that are the backbone of the internet and the data centers that AI relies on.
And this is where the geopolitics really kicks in. This is a race, and right now, one country has a massive head start. China controls about 60% of the world's germanium, and they've already shown they're willing to use that power, hitting hardware makers with export restrictions. For the West, relying so heavily on one country for these materials is a huge vulnerability.
Okay, so these incredibly valuable resources have been locked under miles of ice for millennia. So what gives? Why is this global competition heating up right now?
And the answer, ironically enough, is climate change. The melting Arctic is basically the key that's unlocking this treasure chest. But it's not just about the minerals. It's also creating a radical shift in how things move around the planet, opening up brand new, much shorter shipping routes between continents.
Now let's look at the hard numbers, because this is what gets companies excited. A trip from Shanghai to Rotterdam through the Arctic, it shaves more than 2 full days off the journey. When you're shipping high-value tech, that is a huge deal. But, and it's a big but, look at the cost. Right now, that speed will set you back more than $250,000 extra for a single trip.
So this slide really just spells out that central dilemma, doesn't it? On one hand, you get your stuff way faster, which is a massive advantage for tech supply chains. But on the other, you're paying a huge premium for special ice-strengthened ships, higher insurance, and those mandatory icebreaker escorts. It's a classic trade-off, time versus money.
All right, so let's zoom out a bit and look at the bigger picture. Because this combination of resources and new shipping routes is turning the Arctic into a brand new global chessboard, and the major world powers are already making their moves.
You know, U.S. interest in Greenland is not a new thing, not at all. Way back in 1946, the Truman administration secretly offered $100 million in gold to buy the island. Now, fast forward to today, and that interest is back with a vengeance, with recent administrations openly connecting Greenland's location and its minerals to American national security.
So who are the players? First up, there's China. Now, obviously, they aren't geographically anywhere near the Arctic, but they've gotten creative. They've declared themselves a near-Arctic state. It's a pretty clever piece of branding that lets them argue they have a legitimate stake in the region's future, which gives them a justification to invest and build their influence.
Then you've got the United States, which, well, they're being a lot less subtle about it. As this quote from former President Trump makes crystal clear, the position is that anything short of U.S. control is unacceptable, and they are explicitly linking it to both national security and getting access to those critical minerals.
And caught right in the middle of this tug of war is Denmark, which has controlled Greenland for about 300 years. The words from their foreign minister really highlight just how deep this disagreement goes. They're pushing back hard against what they see as a wish of conquering Greenland, signaling a major diplomatic clash over the island's entire future.
So, with all this potential wealth, all this strategic value, you'd think an Arctic gold rush is pretty much a done deal, right? Well, not so fast. The reality on the ground is way more complicated.
There are at least 4 massive hurdles in the way of any kind of gold rush. First, the economics are really shaky. Second, the environment is one of the most brutal on the planet, making mining an absolute nightmare. Third, you have to remember Greenland's own political sovereignty.
And maybe the biggest hurdle of all, as we're about to see, is that almost nobody involved actually wants this to happen.
And this isn't just about politicians arguing. Get this, a staggering 85% of Greenlanders are against the idea of joining the U.S. And what's even more surprising maybe is that 3/4 of Americans don't want it either. There is just no public support for this on either side.
Experts are also throwing cold water on the whole idea. An expert on mineral exploration points out that even one of the largest known deposits in the world, Tan Breeze, might not even be profitable to mine. The concentration of the good stuff is just so low that the cost to dig it up and ship it out could be more than it's even worth.
So, if a big resource grab isn't likely, does that mean the Arctic doesn't have any real value? Not at all. In fact, a recent scientific discovery points to a completely different and maybe far more important kind of treasure that's hidden under all that ice.
So imagine this. Scientists are drilling down, way down, almost 3 kilometers deep, through a fast-moving river of ice. They fully expect to hit solid bedrock at the bottom, but they don't. Instead, they hit wet mud. They discovered that this entire massive block of ice is just sliding on a layer of mud. And that discovery completely changes our basic understanding of how ice sheets melt.
Okay, so mud under ice. Why is that such a big deal? Because knowing this allows for much more accurate predictions of global sea level rise. That helps us protect vulnerable coastal cities all over the world, from Miami to Venice. It also helps us understand how nutrients get delivered into the ocean, which directly affects Greenland's fishing industry, a huge cornerstone of their economy. And that really brings us to the most crucial question, doesn't it? This intense focus on minerals for AI and who controls what might be missing the entire point. The Arctic presents us with a really high-stakes choice. Do we treat it like a frozen battlefield for a new Cold War? Or do we see it as a vital, living laboratory for understanding and maybe even surviving on a changing planet? The answer is going to define a lot more than just the future of technology.